Ever since the notion has been put forward that somehow the .30-06 bullet didn't exit Charlie Kirk's body, people have just been losing their shit.
There's no way this could happen. I've killed more deer than chronic wasting disease, and I've never seen a bullet not exit. It should have left a basketball-sized hole out the back of him. Look what it does to ballistics gel. Look what it does to the ballistics dummies. It just goes right through him and crushes bone.
Put that there. Whose show do you think this is? Here's the thing. It's happened before. Yeah, there's been a high-profile assassination in this country where a high-powered .30 caliber rifle, most likely probably suspected to be a .30-06, was used to shoot a high-profile political figure, and the bullet never exited. And while there is a ton of controversy around that specific assassination, one of the facts remains, and it is pretty much undisputed, that the bullet never left the body, or didn't exit the back of the body and blow a basketball-sized hole all over the wall behind him. Now, we'll get to that in a minute, but let's talk about ballistics gelatin for a second, because this is the darling of YouTubers. Everybody who's in the gun space, who's anybody, gets a block of 10% FBI ballistics gel and then shoots it with high-speed cameras so everybody can see the temporary and permanent wound cavities and the expansion of bullets all in 20,000 frame per second video. And that's great. It's a cool thing, but there's some limitations on that gel. There's actually two types of ballistics gel in the world. There's 10% FBI and there's 20% NATO. And it's really important that you understand the difference and the limitations of this medium before you start drawing all of your assumptions and conclusions based upon it. First, 10% ballistics gel was developed in response to the 1986 FBI shootout, where the FBI and their weak service revolvers found themselves outgunned by some suspects, one of which had a high-powered rifle. I believe it was a Mini 14 chambered in .556 NATO/223 Remington. They developed this gel as a medium so they could test the penetration and expansion of handgun bullets so that they could find the optimal round. It does not take into account things like bone structure or anything else. It was just calibrated to be the same consistency as human soft tissue so you could see how a certain bullet would travel through, how much expansion and weight retention that bullet had, and how deep it would go into a person. They wanted to get somewhere between, I believe, 12 and 18 inches of penetration to be suitable, and a certain rate of expansion and bullet retention. That's all that's designed for. People shooting it with rifle bullets and everything else, that's really not what that test was designed to do. Second, there is a 20% grade. It's a more gelatin to water mixture when you build it, and NATO came up with that to test to make sure their bullets didn't expand or break in the body so that they didn't violate the Geneva Conventions and nobody brought them up on war crimes charges. That's it. That's the only reason that exists. And again, they made it a little harder so that they could account for things like uniforms, density, equipment, maybe a little bit of bone, but that's what that exists for. It is a steady, constant, calibrated medium by which to test bullets for certain properties. Nothing more, nothing less, okay? Ballistics gelatin, ballistics dummies, okay? What about the dummies and it goes through their bones? Well, I'll link you a survey conducted in, I believe, 2016 or 2017 by the National Institutes of Health, where they were looking for a suitable supplement or a suitable alternative for human cadaver bone to test the frangibility qualities of 5.56 and 7.62 by 51 NATO, otherwise known as 308. More on the 308 later. Their study took into account two synthetic bones that are made for training orthopedic surgeons on. It's a company called Sinbone out of Switzerland and another company here in the United States called Sawbones. And what they found was that these two sets of synthetic bones do not replicate accurately the properties of bone striking human human cadaver bone. They wanted to find a way to get more bones so they could test more bullets without having to have more already dead bodies. Simple as that. And what they concluded was there's no replacement for the real thing. Now, they do use pig thoracic vertebrae in some of these tests to kind of tune stuff before they end up shooting a cadaver so they don't have to shoot through all their cadaver bones. Pig thoracic vertebrae is what is generally accepted as the closest analog to human bone and human bone density. So let's get back to that it already happened thing. Some of you may already know this, but here you go. Martin Luther King was shot with a .30 caliber high power rifle at a range of about 200 feet, half the distance of what we're talking about with Charlie Kirk. Now there is some skepticism, myself included, behind whose rifle it was and who pulled the trigger, but there are some generally accepted parts of that narrative, and one of them is that the bullet never exited Dr. King's body. We already do have an autopsy. We have sketches, we have x-rays that we can access through the National Archives to confirm this. You can see x-ray photos of bone fragment and bullet fragment in Dr. King's body. Some people have questioned the legitimacy of the autopsy, and I'll address that right now. You see, people think that this guy named Dr. Michael Baden performed the autopsies of MLK, JFK, Epstein, everybody and anybody who's ever been killed and had a conspiracy around them, and that's simply not true. What Dr. Baden is he's an expert that's brought in to consult with panels, commissions, commentary on TV. He's more of a talking head. He did not perform the initial autopsy on Dr. Martin Luther King. This man did. Dr. Jerry T. Francisco, he was at the time the Shelby County, Tennessee medical examiner. Dr. Francisco did this autopsy. All the sketches and the x-rays that you see are his. And there are some criticisms of his autopsy method, but I don't think that they're really relevant, but we'll talk about them right now just to get them out of the way. In Dr. Francisco's autopsy, there were some questions about the bullet path and the dissection. He didn't really dissect in to dig around and find every little path that went on. And he said in his testimony, his affidavit, that he didn't do that because he didn't want to disfigure Dr. King's body anymore. He was already dead. He was able to recover to the fragments of the .30 caliber bullet, and there wasn't any more purpose for him to want to dig deeper to really trace bullet paths, intersections, where stuff bounced around. Now, the standard narrative is that Dr. King stepped out on that balcony, he was getting ready to address some followers down below him, and a shot came from a second-story window of a rental house, or like a boarding house basically, across the street. It struck him somewhere about here, went through his jawbone, then down into his neck, through his spine and his thoracic vertebrae, and the remainders and fragments were found back behind his shoulder bone. This was confirmed by the now controversial HSCA panel, and some people think that the re-entry path is odd and that the autopsy documentation was not conclusive for every internal intersection, which kind of goes back to Dr. Francisco's point. Whether you believe Dr. Francisco or not, I don't know. He just didn't collect that data, and people have tried to interpret different things based upon that. Basically, it entered here in the jaw, exited the jaw, came back into the neck, went back out into the spine, and that's where into the shoulder, and that's where the fragments were found. What's less controversial is the actual bullet that was used. It was a .30 caliber Remington Peters soft point metal jacketed bullet, a jacketed soft point bullet. This bullet is still produced inside of Remington's line of Core-Lock. It's a very well-known, very well-used hunting bullet. It's definitely a FUD bullet, so I would definitely think that Granddad may have put that in his rifle and found it worked for him, and he kept using it year after year after year because it worked with his rifle and it worked on dropping deer. And if our shooter received that rifle like we are told that he did, he probably just continued to use Granddad's ammo, which would match up kind of here. Possibly there's some overlap potential. Okay. Now, the controversy there is more about the fragments matching the rifling of the alleged murder weapon that James Earl Ray was alleged to have used. They were inconclusive. So that is part of what sparks that controversy and fuels that controversy when it comes to the assassination of Dr. King. And because of that wound tracking, there has been some controversy about exactly where the shot came from, but most skeptics, most people that are questioning the narrative of Dr. King don't really question that that shot came from this place with a high velocity, high power .30 caliber round, struck him here and killed him. There's no conspiracy around a second shot, a second shooter, a guy with a handgun sitting next to him, detonating microphone clipped to him. Most everybody agrees Dr. King was shot with a high-power .30 caliber rifle bullet, and he was one shot, and the bullet never exited his body. Now, if you want to say that maybe it was a different .30 caliber, well, a 308 or 7.62 by 51 NATO can and is commonly loaded with the exact same projectiles as a 30-06, but at those ranges, the terminal ballistics of those two rounds are going to be very, very similar, so similar that you probably cannot tell the difference. 308 or 7.62 NATO is just a shortened 30-06 cartridge that they used the technologies that had been developed in firearms since the 30-06 was invented to ramp up what was possible inside that shorter case and get it closer to matching a 30-06. They wanted a shorter case because it cycles faster in automatic and machine guns. It also has a little less recoil, it's a little bit more manageable, okay? Those things being addressed, we can see that there's really no controversy about a man getting hit by a high-power 30 caliber rifle and the bullet not exiting his body. It fragmented somewhere in Dr. King, and if you are to believe what is now in the non-official narrative, let's take that a step further too. You see, in Charlie Kirk's case, we do have all of our video footage that we've all seen, and we have some secondary sources telling us that the bullet didn't exit. We don't have a definitive official narrative from the FBI, state and local government. We just have what two people have relayed that I know of from conversations they had with the supposed surgeon who was attending Charlie Kirk. One of those people is a member of TPUSA who has said that the doctor told him it was a miracle the bullet didn't pass through and strike another person. Now, you can infer what you want about that. We can just take this at face value and say, okay, that's something. But there are some questions I have as to the use of miracle and some other things in, or the fact that it was a two-person conversation, telephone, punctuation, high stress, all these things can contribute to information getting perceived and reported differently than what was said, okay? So, but for what we're saying right here, let's just assume that, okay? The second person that I know of is a guy I didn't think would say something that would corroborate the narrative, and that was Alex Jones. Alex Jones said that he had a conversation with the attending physician, and the physician told him that the round took a glance off of his collarbone here, his clavicle, went into the neck, struck the spine, spiraled down, mushroomed out, fragmented, blew everything out on its way down. I'll tell you what I've observed just from the videos that I've seen. The neck wound doesn't appear to be regular. It does not appear to me to be a hole punched by a .30 caliber bullet straight on. It doesn't have the round signature. It's bigger. It almost looks like a slash of some sort. If you want to go back and review those videos and find some unedited copies, especially from frontal angles, you can see, we've all seen the shirt, and the shirt causes controversy because people think that a strike here would not cause the vortice effect that we've seen on the shirt, and I think that they could be right. If you watch some of the videos right before Charlie falls over, you will see both the stream of blood from the neck. You will also see a hole and blood spilling out from somewhere in this area right here. I believe this is probably your primary impact point. Based on what all these other guys are telling me, or what all these other people are saying, I believe that the bullet probably impacted the clavicle, either did like Alex Jones said and deviated, hit the neck, hit the spine, went down, or it impacted the clavicle, went straight through, because we have seen photos or video of the back of the shirt moving too. And what we see here is bone fragments and everything else blowing out. I can neither confirm nor deny any of that, but we're gonna go forward with the assumption that Kirk was hit, either hit on the clavicle and we had a fragment or a bounce or a yaw effect into the neck, or there was a strike here and everything else blew out the neck. How could this happen in certain cases with a human being but not with an animal? Well, there's some difference between bipedal hominids and quadruped game animals and the angles at which shots are taken that can explain a lot of this. And for that, I need to go find a prop for an analog, so just give me 1 second. Get over here. Okay. Here's our stand-in for a quadruped game animal. It is a Maltipoo Jackalope. And if you're wondering why I dressed my girlfriend's dog up like a gender-confused 8-point buck, well, it's just easier. All right, I'm going to get these off of him because he doesn't like that. But when hunters take shots at game animals, you're usually taking it at a broadside. And there are some distinct differences in how game animals are built that contribute to that pass-through. You see, their load-bearing structure is all in their forelegs and their hind legs, and their spine just works as kind of a connection to keep everything suspended down here and together here to here. And when a game hunter takes a shot at an animal, he's aiming for vitals that are usually behind the shoulder blade. The ribs that are in here are bone, but ribs are more flexible. They're just there to keep everything cased in and supported and protected from accidental bumps and everything else. So when you take a shot on a game animal, you're usually taking it at broadside at level, and you're aiming for vitals in here, and the round easily passes through these bones with no problem and blows everything out the other side. That's just how you do it. You're also, even if you're going to take a frontal shot, you're going to be shooting in to the front here and coming in into vitals, and it may bounce around and blow out on the sides. Big heavy game like moose or bear or something, if you take a shoulder shot, you do end up having instances where you don't have pass through, or you have a redirection and it comes back out on the other side over here. But never are you ever intentionally targeting the spinal area. And you don't ever really take headshots. It's not ethical to shoot an animal from the head, because if you miss the kill zone, you end up blowing his jaw out and he goes and starves to death. Same thing with really neck shots. But if you do take a neck shot, you end up having a really big blowout because the neck is so much thinner and it's just basically muscle and the spine. And if you were to hit the spine in these shots, it's a direct shot on the spine, and all that energy is shot right into the spine with no real backing behind it or in front of it to induce yaw or fragmentation or slow a bullet down. Also, when you're taking hunting shots, generally speaking, you're hitting them straight on. You're not coming in at angles or any other thing else, because you want to try to preserve as much meat as you can, and this is the easiest way to kill a game animal without blowing out all the vital meat in all these big muscle groups. So that is why you can be the most successful hunter in the world and have killed 100 deer in your life, and 100 out of 100 you've always seen a pass through, because you're a good shot and you're aiming in the right places that put the animal down and don't ever really intersect with any of the hard, dense bone structures in the body. Human beings are different, and I'll get this guy back to his mom and explain for you here in a minute. Now, most big rifle shots, and in these cases with Dr. King and with Charlie Kirk both, the shot has come from some sort of frontal angle and at an elevation. And our anatomy is directly to play into that, I believe. You see, we have ribs, which are just as flexible as an animal's, but we also have things like load-bearing clavicles, so we can pick things up, and we also have dense shoulder blades behind us. And in between that all is our spinal column. And our spinal column is unique because our spinal column is in and of itself a stack of very dense, thick bone formulated to do two things. There's your neck. One, to carry and support the load of your body and anything else you might be carrying that's suspended to it. It's the central vertical column of our body, and then it connects down here at the pelvis to our femur and everything else, which is also heavy, dense, load-bearing bone. That's how we're built. The other thing about spines is that they are the central conduit for our electrical system. They are where all of our nervous system pathways connect and route back up to the brain. So, twofold, they are super strong for a reason. One is to handle that load and compression. Two, it's to protect that central nervous system from any kind of impact and severing the spine. In an animal, they're here, they're kind of designed to suspend a load hanging from them, keep them from falling apart, and to protect that central column. But in the way that the animal is built, everything's hanging down here. You're never hitting it square on in front like this. You're always hitting it from the side, aiming at You're always hitting it at the side, aiming it at all the vitals that are hanging down from it. So you're a good shot, you've killed a lot of deer, you've never probably hit the spine, and you've never also probably hit the spine in combination with other load-bearing bones. That's what makes human beings different. We have the clavicles out here, we have the shoulder blades in the back. In both instances, the shot was taken at a higher angle of elevation from the front, and appears in the case of Charlie Kirk and most certainly in the case of Dr. Martin Luther King, it hit a large, strong bone before it entered in and then struck the spine. In the case of Dr. King, it came in through the jaw, went in, hit the thoracic vertebrae down here, and either just exploded into fragmentation or split, bounced around, and ended up lodged back behind the shoulder blades. In the case of Charlie Kirk, I think that it most likely hit the clavicle and either bounced up into the spine and then tumbled back down, or it went straight in, split the clavicle, started to immediately fragment or lose energy or yaw, hit the spine again, and then stayed somewhere in his body with that energy dump. We don't have conclusive proof that he was hit in the spine, but by all accounts, by experts, this motion here is indicative of a severe spinal injury. So, and it corroborates what is being said by the secondary sources, that the bullet struck, hit the spine, paralyzed him, killed him instantly, blew everything out inside of him. And because we have all of this skin around our body, if the thing's not going to come straight back out, it will contain some of that shockwave. We just have so much more mass. So that's why I believe that there is a likelihood of a round from a very, very powerful game hunting rifle not being able to blow its way through the human body, just because simply we're built differently and we're taking shots at different angles. Okay, so having seen and observed all of that, I'm going to leave you with my hypothesis and what I'm going to do as a testing method going forward to try to see if we can get a bullet to fragment in a similar way as what we have documented well in Dr. Martin Luther King, and what we believe based on video evidence and unofficial secondary sources may have happened to Charlie Kirk. Here's my hypothesis, and I've written it down so I can speak to it clearly. When bullets impact high density or load-bearing bones, it can induce yaw or fragment. If it then strikes the spine or other bones, such as a shoulder blade, the impact may dissipate enough energy to prevent an exit, even for high-powered and high-velocity rounds such as .30-06. This phenomenon is more likely in humans due to the alignment of bones in the vertical thorax. Simple as that. That's the hypothesis. That's what we're going to test going forward. Now, to do that, I'm going to go ahead and start mixing up blocks of gelatin with as similar and bone in density that I think I can get to a human spinal column plus clavicle and shoulder blade. I have put some requests out to local butchers to try to start sourcing bones, specifically pork, thoracic vertebrae, and shoulders. If you are a hunter somewhere within 100 or 200 miles of the Phoenix area and you've just shot a big game animal and you want to donate the spine or the shoulder blade for some research, I'd love to have it. Send me an email. My email's in the description below. I can see if I can swing on over and pick up what you got. So keep following along. That's where we're going with that. In the meantime, I do have some content that I want to put out that's more speaking to just some of the knowledge-based stuff that I have. I want to talk about heirloom rifles and how they play a part in this, especially with the narrative with the text messages and the granddad's rifle thing. Look for that one coming out. And if you got anything else you want to see that I can do in a studio setting here just to speak about, leave a question in the comments below. Till then, have a great day.